Peter Parker finally has everything he ever wanted. A wife he loves, Aunt May alive, and a baby on the way. He's even planning to hang up the mask and chase a research career instead of supervillains. And then the man with his face comes back. Ben Reilly, the clone Peter watched die years ago, walks back into New York with all of Peter's memories and a very different idea of what Spider-Man's life should look like. At the same time, a degenerating clone named Kaine keeps seeing Mary Jane's death in his visions, and a forgotten geneticist quietly poisons both Aunt May and MJ with a disease only he can cure. By the time the tests come back saying Peter might be the clone, there's a kidnapped baby, two Green Goblins, and two Spider-Men being told only one of them deserves to be real. That's where we're starting. Now, before we dive into the story itself, we need to spend a few minutes on context, because without it, a lot of this won't hit the way it's supposed to. The original Clone Saga launched in 1994, and at the time, the Spider-Man line of comics was actually doing incredibly well. You have to understand that in the early 90s, Spider-Man was everywhere. The animated series was a huge deal. The Black Suit storyline had already happened. Venom had become one of the most popular villains in comics. Spider-Man was selling massively. And because of all that, Marvel was running 4 monthly Spider-Man titles simultaneously. The Amazing Spider-Man, Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man, and Web of Spider-Man. 4 books, every single month, all happening at the same time, all in continuity together. Now, when you're running 4 books a month, you need ideas, big ongoing ideas that give readers a reason to keep picking up all 4 titles. And what the editorial team landed on was something that had been sitting in Spider-Man's history for almost 20 years. The clone that had been created back in the 70s by a villain called the Jackal. See, back in Amazing Spider-Man number 149, a genetics professor at Empire State University who had been obsessed with Gwen Stacy cloned both Gwen and Peter. The clone showed up, fought the real Peter, and appeared to die. The body was dumped in an incinerator. And that was it. Done. A footnote. But in 1994, the editorial team decided to bring that clone back and make the reveal that he had been the real Peter Parker the whole time. The readers revolted. The original saga stretched to nearly 2 years, involved dozens of characters, several different villains, a mystery mastermind, at least 4 different clones, a fake baby subplot, and an ending so confusing and unsatisfying that it is still brought up in discussions of what went wrong with 90s Marvel comics to this day. So, in 2009, DeFalco and Mackie sat down and wrote the version they'd always wanted to write. Same concept, same characters, same central twist. 6 issues, no filler. That's what we're covering today. So the story opens on 2 things happening at the same time, and the contrast between them sets up everything you need to know going forward. On one side of the city, Peter Parker is living what might be the best stretch of his life. He and Mary Jane are married, she is pregnant, Peter has a job, a home, and something he has almost never had in his entire life as Spider-Man, stability. For a character whose life has been defined by tragedy and loss ever since Uncle Ben died in that alley, this is huge. This is what he's always wanted, and for the first time in a long time, he actually has it. On the other side of the country, a man named Ben Reilly is on his way to New York, and we can immediately see that his relationship to the city is more complicated than just coming home. He looks at the skyline the way you look at something you love and grieve for at the same time. Something you had to walk away from not because you wanted to, but because staying would have destroyed you. Now, you might know Ben Reilly from Spider-Man, and yes, it's confirmed that it's a direct nod to this Ben Reilly from the comics. Ben Reilly is a very interesting character, and I want to spend some real time on this because it's easy to rush past it. Ben is a clone. He knows he's a clone. He has known this for years. He has all of Peter Parker's memories up to a certain point. He remembers Uncle Ben's death. He remembers being bitten by the spider. He remembers Gwen Stacy. He remembers all of it. But he also knows with certainty that he is not the original. He is a copy. And here's the thing. He is not bitter about it. He is not scheming to take over Peter's life. He is not here to reclaim some identity he feels was stolen from him. He came back because Aunt May is sick. He came back because, clone or not, that woman raised a person whose memories live inside him, and he loves her the same way Peter does. And Ben could only talk to her over the telephone. He pretended to be a distant relative to Aunt May. He dyes his hair blonde to distinguish himself from Peter. He's been calling himself Ben Reilly, combining Uncle Ben's first name with Aunt May's maiden name. Meanwhile, and this is where the tension starts building before we even know it's building, someone else has been watching for Ben's return. We get our first glimpse of Kaine in these early pages, and he is immediately striking as a visual. He is large, scarred, clearly powerful, and he moves with the kind of deliberate patience that makes it obvious he has been waiting a long time. He watches Ben arrive without intervening. For now, he just watches, but we can feel the dread radiating off of him. Now, we need to talk about Kaine properly, because he has a cool outfit design. Like, just look at it, right? Okay, coming back. He is genuinely one of the most underrated characters to come out of this entire era of Spider-Man comics, and I think he gets overlooked because of how chaotic the original Clone Saga became. Kaine is an earlier clone, not the one we know as Ben Reilly, but one that came before, an earlier attempt by Miles Warren to clone Peter Parker that went wrong. His cellular structure is degenerating. What this means practically is that his body is slowly falling apart at the molecular level, which causes him constant physical pain and has left deep burn-like scarring across his face and hands. He is a man defined by the fact that he is broken at the most fundamental biological level, and there's nothing he can do about it. But here is where Kaine becomes genuinely fascinating, and where DeFalco and Mackie do something really smart with him. Because of his degeneration, his spider sense doesn't work the way Peter's does. Peter's spider sense is a warning system. It alerts him to immediate physical danger. Kaine's version has mutated into something darker. He gets visions, premonitions, images of future events that he cannot fully control or understand that come to him whether he wants them to or not. And his visions keep showing him the same thing over and over again. Mary Jane Watson, dead. The tragedy of Kaine is that his methods are brutal in a way that Peter's never could be. He does not have Uncle Ben's death as a moral anchor. He does not have a code about the sanctity of life. He has pain and premonitions and the profound, warped kind of love for a version of a life he never got to live. He is what Spider-Man looks like if you strip away every formative experience that made Peter Parker good and leave only the raw power and the grief. He is a dark mirror, not a villain exactly, but not a hero either, something messier and more tragic than either of those categories. So eventually, the inevitable happens. Peter comes face to face with Ben. When Peter and Ben finally meet face to face for the first time, at first, Peter thinks it's some form of a trick by the chameleon, but Ben tells him that he is the clone made by the Jackal. Peter is angry, confused, and suspicious. Ben is nervous but calm, clearly rehearsed for this moment because he's had years to imagine how it might go. They trade questions. Where have you been? What do you want? Why now? Ben explains the life he's been living as Ben Reilly, the jobs, the drifting, the quiet visits to Aunt May. Peter starts to realize this isn't a cheap fake. The guy across from him remembers things only he should know. Before either of them can process it fully, the world reminds them they're Spider-Man. A car comes flying off an overpass, and their shared instincts take over. Without thinking, they move in sync, one webbing the vehicle, the other catching the civilians below, just like they've both done 1,000 times. The choreography is perfect in that unsettling way where you can see they've had the same training, same muscles, same reflexes, same sense of responsibility. They save everyone, and when the adrenaline drops, they look at each other again with a slightly different understanding. Whatever the explanation is, this guy is not just a random imposter. That's when the attack hits. Out of nowhere, they're blindsided by a barrage of webbing and debris. Something with spider powers hits them hard, fast, and doesn't reveal itself. No villain monologue, no costume reveal, no face. Just violence and then vanish. Peter and Ben are left bruised and confused, with one clear conclusion. Someone out there knew both Spider-Man would be on that rooftop and wanted to test them or hurt them without being seen. That someone is Kaine. Kaine doesn't step into the light yet, but we see him from the other side, reporting back. He's working for someone. There's a mastermind behind him, and the plan was never just to bring Ben back to New York. The plan was to force Peter and Ben together, to make them meet, bond under fire, and start acting like two parts of the same life. Exactly the outcome the Master wanted. The two Spider-Men think this rooftop meeting was an accident. It wasn't.
Now, Miles Warren, the Jackal. We have to talk about this guy because he is the fulcrum that everything else turns on. Miles Warren was a professor of genetics at Empire State University. He was brilliant, genuinely, legitimately brilliant in the way that Marvel's science villains often are. He was also obsessed with Gwen Stacy in a way that started as admiration and curdled over time into something far more unhealthy. When Gwen died, when the Green Goblin threw her off that bridge and Spider-Man's web snapped her neck trying to catch her, Warren broke in a way that he never came back from. He blamed Spider-Man. He decided that his grief and his obsession justified anything, and what he had was science. So he cloned her, and he cloned Peter, and he told himself a story about how what he was doing was actually a form of love, preservation, continuation, the refusal to let death be permanent. He dressed it up in the language of creation and progress, but underneath, it was just a man who couldn't accept loss and had enough knowledge to do something monstrous about it. The Jackal had also been busy doing something far more sinister on the side. He poisoned Aunt May and Mary Jane, not with a bullet or a bomb, something far more insidious than that. A genetic-level disease, engineered at the biological level, something so specific and so deep that no conventional medicine could touch it. No doctor in the world could diagnose it properly, let alone treat it, and the Jackal had the only antidote in existence. He is holding two innocent women hostage at the cellular level to make sure Peter and Ben have no choice but to engage with him on his terms. He has removed every exit. Kaine finds out about this, and here is where something genuinely human surfaces inside him. Because despite everything, despite all the violence and the mission and the years of operating in the shadows, Kaine still carries memories of Aunt May and Mary Jane, the same memories Ben and Peter carry. He knows exactly who these women are to him on some fundamental level he cannot fully explain, and the idea of them dying as collateral damage in Warren's scheme enrages him in a way that nothing else has. Kaine is furious. This is the line he will not cross. He did not sign up to watch two innocent women die. He breaks from the Jackal entirely and goes back to Peter and Ben. He tells them everything, that the Jackal is behind the disease, that the antidote exists, that Warren has been playing all of them, and then he tells them the only path forward. The three of them go in together, take Warren down, and take the cure from him by force. Peter and Ben agree immediately, and the three of them, a very strange team by any measure, move on the Jackal's secret lab. It is a trap. Of course it is a trap. Warren knew Kaine would break eventually, and he planned for it. The moment they enter the lab, they are captured. Now, this is where things get truly chaotic, and where Warren finally reveals the full scope of what he has been building. The Jackal releases a particular gaseous agent that he specifically is immune to, and Kaine, Peter, and Ben all are vulnerable to because they have the same DNA. They all faint and are captured by the Jackal. He does a very generic villain talk, explaining his plans to them. He then takes Peter's and Ben's DNA. Peter's DNA is the foundation for the clone's DNA, but he uses Ben's DNA as stabilizing agent because he's the only clone in existence who's not degrading. Keep this in mind. So he floods the lab with clones and sets them on the three of them. Peter, Ben, and Kaine are all distressed about it. They see hundreds of other people who are basically them, but this time it looks like the clones are just blank slates. They only have the body and the powers of Spider-Man, not the mind. And after the generic villain talk again, he reveals to Peter and Ben that Kaine is also a clone. After that, he reveals that he has the clone that could cure Aunt May and Mary Jane. Peter gets angry. He needs the antidote or they're dead. And then, in the middle of all of this, the Jackal makes a clone of Gwen Stacy. She walks into the room and Kaine just stops. Everything stops for him.
Because Kaine carries Peter Parker's memories, which means he carries the grief for Gwen Stacy the same way Peter does. He watched her die through borrowed memories. He has carried that loss for years. And now she is standing in front of him, alive, looking exactly as she did, and it breaks something open in him that all the fighting in the world could not have reached. He goes into full rage, not the cold, controlled violence he normally operates with. They start fighting all the clones. The clones are not experienced with their powers, so they're not efficient at fighting at all, but they still are able to overpower the Spider-Man because of the sheer number they are in. But then, something happens that nobody expected. The clones start disintegrating. One by one, Warren's freshly made copies begin breaking down at the cellular level, the same degeneration that has been slowly destroying Kaine for years happening in fast forward. They fall apart. And Warren, watching this happen, watching his carefully engineered army collapse, begins to understand something that his own arrogance had blighted him to. If the clones made with Ben's DNA as stabilizing agent are still degenerating, it means Ben's stability is not as absolute as Warren believed. But more importantly, it raises another question. Because if the clones are breaking down and Ben is not, the biological logic points in only one direction. Ben might be the real Peter Parker the whole time. Now, in the middle of all of this chaos, the disintegrating clones, Gwen's appearance, Warren's plan falling apart around him, Ben, because Ben has spent years developing a coping mechanism for impossible situations, makes a joke about it. Pretty brainy plan, Pete, for a clone. The kind of humor that says, I am not ready to deal with this right now, and neither are you, so let's not. It lands exactly right. Kaine, however, is not in a joking mood. He turns to Warren with everything he has been carrying. The years of the generation, the pain, the visions, the partnership he extended in good faith that Warren repaid by threatening two innocent women, and he delivers the Mark of Kaine. Now, the Mark of Kaine is Kaine's signature. It is what happens when he presses his hand against someone's face and uses his version of Spider-Man's wall-crawling ability in reverse. Instead of adhering to a surface, he tears away from it. The result is a deep, burning scar left on the skin of whoever he marks, permanent and unmistakable. It is Kaine's way of saying, I was here, I did this, and I want you to carry it the rest of your life the way I carry mine. It is brutal, it is personal, and against Warren, it feels entirely earned. Peter and Ben do not wait around. They grab the antidote and they run. As they're moving, Ben brings it up, quietly, without pressure, but directly, the way Ben always does things. We should talk about what the Jackal said. Peter doesn't dismiss it. He doesn't pretend it didn't happen. He just says, yeah, we will, but not right now. And Ben accepts that because Ben understands better than anyone what it means to set something heavy down temporarily because something more urgent needs your hands. They get to the hospital. They get the antidote to the doctors, and Aunt May and Mary Jane come back from whatever cellular abyss Warren had been slowly pulling them toward. When Mary Jane is well enough to talk, she says it before he has to ask. She does not care what the Jackal said. She does not care what the test implies or what the science suggests or what Miles Warren spent years constructing in a secret lab to prove. Peter is Peter. Her husband is her husband. The man she married, the man she has been building a life with, the man whose child she is carrying, that man is completely and entirely real to her, and no supervillain's obsession gets to take that away. She is not interested in the debate. As far as she is concerned, there is no debate. And that, more than any test result, is what settles it for Peter. Ben and Peter, the final conversation. So then it is just the two of them, and the conversation they've been putting off finally happens. Ben goes first, because Ben is the one who has had longer to make peace with the uncertainty. He keeps it simple. Nothing changes. He is Ben, Peter is Peter. Whatever Warren said, whatever the clones implied, whatever the biology might or might not say, the two of them have lived completely different lives from the moment of separation, and those lives belong to the people who lived them. Ben is not going to suddenly start calling himself Peter Parker. Peter is not going to disappear. They are two separate people who happen to share an origin, and that is genuinely okay. Peter listens to all of this, and then he says something Ben did not see coming. He is resigning from being Spider-Man. Not dramatically, not in a moment of despair,
quietly and with complete conviction. He has a wife. He has a child on the way. He has spent his entire life sacrificing his personal happiness on the altar of responsibility, and he is not doing that anymore. The responsibility now is here, in this hospital room, in this family, in this life he almost lost. Whatever the Jackal's test said or didn't say, it clarified something for Peter. He knows what matters. He knows where he needs to be. And for the first time in a long time, Peter Parker makes a choice that is entirely for himself. But in the dark, Kaine was watching. He's always watching. He's talking to the actual mastermind behind all the plans. He says he got the Jackal stabilizing agent and will bring it to him. After resigning as Spider-Man, Peter throws himself into two things: his family and his future. He and Mary Jane start actively planning for the baby. Names, nursery, what their life will look like once there's a third Parker in the apartment. At the same time, Peter focuses on securing a research grant, finally using his scientific talent to build a stable civilian career instead of a double life in the mask. While Peter steps back, Ben steps up. Ben, now fully taking on the Spider-Man identity, clashes with Dr. Octopus during a lab heist. Octavius hits a research facility grabbing experimental tech, and Ben intervenes as the new Spider-Man. Their fight is a classic Octopus encounter. Metal arms in tight spaces, debris flying, civilians in danger. Doc Ock eventually escapes by knocking down a mass of debris to distract Ben, forcing Ben to choose between chasing the villain and saving people. Ben, being Ben, saves the people. Octavius gets away. Ben tracks him down later, and when they face off again, Dr. Octopus immediately notices something off. The costume is familiar, the moves are familiar, but the man under the mask feels different. He calls it out. This Spider-Man seems like an imposter. Before that tension can fully pay off, Kaine enters. In the original Clone Saga, Kaine actually kills Doc Ock, and he is later replaced with a female Dr. Octopus. In this retelling, Kaine stops just short of that. He tries to murder Octavius by suffocating him with webbing, wrapping it around his face and cutting off his air. Then he flees, leaving Octavius to die. Ben makes a choice that defines him. Instead of letting a longtime enemy choke, he tears the webbing away and saves Dr. Octopus's life. The man who called him an imposter a moment ago now lives because of him. One day, while Mary Jane is at the daily grind having coffee with Aunt May, her labor begins. Right there, in the middle of a normal afternoon, the contractions hit. May helps her and they immediately inform Peter and Ben. Both rush to the hospital. And here's another key deviation from the original saga. Ben and Peter both suit up. Peter puts on web shooters again, Ben dons his own, and they swing through the city side by side in matching Spider-Man costumes, racing toward the hospital. In the original story, the two never appeared together as Spider-Man at the same time. Here, we get that image fully. On the way, they run into Kaine. Kaine is not done with his own mission, and he intercepts them, leading to a short, intense conflict. Peter and Ben fight them together, but Kaine again flees into the night pursued by Ben, while Peter continues on toward the hospital. Ben breaks off to chase Kaine. Peter keeps going because the baby comes first. At the hospital, Nurse Allison Mongrain appears and begins coordinating the family, escorting everyone to the delivery room. Mary Jane gives birth. The baby is alive, healthy. They name her May Parker, after Aunt May, the emotional heart of Peter's entire life. Mongrain takes the newborn out of the room to clean her up, the most normal hospital procedure in the world. And then the twist hits. Instead of bringing the baby back, she kidnaps her. In a sequence drawn almost exactly like the original saga, Mongrain leaves the hospital with baby May and delivers her to Kaine at the docks. Kaine informs the shadowy mastermind in the background that he has the baby. The mastermind, still unseen, instructs him that the child will be raised overseas. The implication is clear. The Parkers are never supposed to see their daughter again. With a Parker blood sample now in his possession, the mastermind makes his next move. Using that sample, he resurrects Norman Osborn, the original Green Goblin, long believed dead. Norman wakes up shocked, not just by being alive, but by who brought him back. The mastermind is Harry Osborn. Harry gives Norman a Green Goblin mask and tells him there is work to be done. Norman, the father who set this entire cycle of madness into motion decades ago, is brought back into the game by the son who never stopped living in his shadow. Moments later, Ben, in full Spider-Man costume, is attacked by a new Green Goblin. This goblin knows too much. He correctly identifies Spider-Man as Ben and calls him a clone. Then he goes further. In a brutal moment, the goblin impales Ben with his glider. Ben is kept alive, but only barely. The goblin captures him and uses him as bait, knowing Peter will come for him. After beating Ben further, he takes off the mask. It's Harry Osborn, fully revealing himself and hammering home the taunt. Ben is just a clone. Meanwhile, Kaine speaks with Norman, who is also a clone. They talk about baby May, and Kaine admits something important. He feels May is his family too. Not just Peter, Ben, Mary Jane, and Aunt May. Baby May as well, and she should not be punished for the sins of her father. Harry activates the Goblin signal. Outside Oscorp, a Green Goblin-faced light piercing the night sky. It is a message and a lure. Peter, still searching desperately for his missing daughter, sees it and follows it to the source. He enters a warehouse at Oscorp and finds Ben, battered and restrained. Harry is waiting and taunts him, explaining his plan. He has decided to give the honor of killing Peter and Ben to Norman. The legacy of violence is supposed to continue, father and son united in destroying the Parkers. But Norman has changed. Influenced by his conversation with Kaine, Norman turns his weapon not on Peter, but on Harry. He blasts Harry with a goblin device and tells him he cannot allow the cycle to continue. Harry's madness is a direct product of Norman's sins, and Norman, even as a clone, refuses to perpetuate it any further. Peter frees Ben, and the two Spider-Men help Norman fight Harry. The battle is brutal. Peter's shoulder is dislocated in the struggle. Ben, in pain himself, demands to know where Harry has taken baby May. Back at the hospital, Aunt May and Mary Jane sit in a quiet room, wondering where Peter has gone and what has happened to their child. Kaine enters through a window, cradling baby May. He hands her back to their family. Aunt May looks at him, feeling something she can't quite name. She remarks that Kaine seems familiar and asks if they know one another. Kaine answers with one of the most quietly heartbreaking lines in the story. No, and that is my loss. Then he leaves. Whatever place he might have had in their lives, he chose to remain in the shadows. But he made sure the baby came home. Back at Oscorp, Harry remains a threat even after being blasted. Ben restrains him, trying to hold him down. Harry, always thinking in terms of goblin tricks, activates his glider remotely, sending it flying toward Peter's back, a repeat of the same trick Norman once used against Spider-Man decades ago. Ben prepares to leap into its path, ready to sacrifice himself to save Peter. Norman moves first. He jumps in front of the glider and is impaled, sacrificing himself to protect Peter, Ben, and baby May from his own son. Because Norman is a clone, his body begins to disintegrate almost immediately, cellular degeneration eating him away, a visual echo of how Jackal clones die. Harry, furious and broken, vows revenge. The cycle of Osborn madness is not completely over, but it has been disrupted in a way it never had before. The scene shifts. Outside Aunt May's home, we see a quiet moment. Aunt May, Mary Jane, Peter, Ben, and baby May all together. Another major departure from the original Clone Saga, where the baby was missing at the conclusion and presumed dead or taken to Europe. Here, she is safe. She is home. We learn that Kaine is missing. He has disappeared after returning the baby. Harry, meanwhile, is being held in a sanatorium, locked away, his immediate threat contained. Ben decides to leave the city. He promises he will return from time to time, but he knows that Peter's life is here, now with MJ, with May, with Aunt May. Peter, in turn, gives Ben the answer both of them need. Both villains were liars. The Jackal, Harry, Norman, all of them twisted the truth. It doesn't matter who is the clone. What matters is that each of them has a life. They earned their identities through the choices they made, not through test results. The final page shows Ben riding away on his motorcycle, heading back out into the unknown. Above him in the sky is a giant mirage of the Scarlet Spider, the persona he created for himself when he couldn't be Peter Parker, now looming over him like a symbol of who he is and who he might be again. In the distance, Mary Jane asks Peter if he thinks Ben will ever return. Peter answers, "Trust me, MJ, we haven't seen the last of Ben Reilly or the Scarlet Spider." And with that, the 2009 Spider-Man clone saga closes, not with one Spider-Man replacing another, but with two men who share the same origin choosing different paths, each fully real, each fully valid. Now, what I love about the 2009 Clone Saga miniseries is that it is lean. It does not waste your time. It takes one of the most conceptually rich ideas in Spider-Man history and tells it in 6 issues without a single moment of filler. You could read the whole thing in an afternoon and come away from it thinking about identity and authenticity and what we owe each other for days afterward. If you have never touched a Clone Saga comic because of the reputation of the original 90s run, and honestly, I get it, that reputation is not unearned. This miniseries is the place to start. It is the story DeFalco and Mackie wanted to tell, and it is good. Really, genuinely good. Pick it up. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, drop a like for the algorithm. It genuinely helps more than you know. Subscribe if you're new here, and let me know in the comments, who do you believe is the real Peter Parker?